Hello, everybody, and welcome to our panel. I'm so excited to have everybody here today, and welcome. And this is now getting into CMMC from our experts. I'm going to have everybody kind of introduce themselves. So, Ray, I'm going to begin with you, and then we'll just kind of go around.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ray McElroy. I am the founder of Cybersecurity and Technology. We support small DoD contractors with CMMC Level 1 readiness and policy development. I am also a nice cybersecurity career pathway ambassador, as well as an advocate for economic development, workforce and economic development, as well as a mentor and just helping those pivot into tech from non-traditional backgrounds.
I love that. Frank.
So I'm Frank Unpingco. I am the principal director of a small company called Domination Through Automation. Basically, what we are is a bunch of retired Air Force personnel who just wanted to take our experiences from Air Force Cyber and kind of help out, in and outside of the DoD. So that's what we do. And I'm also a NICE ambassador, and just looking forward to having a great conversation.
Fantastic. Dirce.
Hello, everyone. This is Hernandez. Unlike anyone here, I do not have any federal employment experience. So I did a lot of research on CMMC. I've been a 20-year cybersecurity information risk professional, cybersecurity professional. So I want to, hopefully learn from the discussion and also show and share what I have learned in my research on CMMC from a perspective of someone that's been doing this, but not actually has worked for federal government in the past. Thank you.
Great.
And that's probably a benefit.
Yeah, no, I think this is the way we have so many different perspectives, and I think that's what really will, to me, makes this such an interesting conversation.
Yeah, hey everybody, happy to be here. John McNicholas. I have probably about 22 years in the federal government, but I just left a little bit ago. I enjoy cybersecurity. I am also, and it's great to hear all of us are NIST cybersecurity ambassadors. What a great program. What a great way to get experience. I'm the Philadelphia lead, just, helping people come into the career, because as we'll talk about it, this career needs new folks. It needs new people. It needs people to support us and get us forward. Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks, Philippa.
Excellent. So in our opening, we were just talking about the runway. The runway seems pretty short to get us to compliance. So Ray, I'm going to start with you. What are you seeing?
I am seeing organizations either A, scrambling, or B, just stumped as to where to start. So they either are over-analyzing and over-complicating the process, or they're just completely out of the loop and taking their time, which time is of the essence at this point. So they're somewhere on each side of the fence, either just taking their time or stressing themselves out.
And I'm hearing from that you believe there's a middle way.
There's middle ground there. There's middle ground there. I don't think that it's as complex as it's been presented. I think that it's evolving and moving field, and I think that it's going to continue to evolve, but it's not as complex as it seems.
Excellent. Frank, what are you seeing? What's your...
No, I agree with her. I agree with Ray. A lot of it is like they're either pressing the panic button or just kind of throwing their hands up in the air. I've also seen a lot of ignorance, to be honest with you. There's these companies that, well, I have mine, so I don't need to do anything anymore. And it's like, no, you're supposed to maintain, this kind of compliance. And, we talk to a lot of organizations where they're like, I got my level 2 a year and a half ago. And we're like, so where are you now? What are you doing now? And they're like, I got my level 2 compliance a year and a half ago, so there's a lot of that going around, and that kind of sucks. And, that recently just came out that DoD needs to be a little bit more involved. Right. And like in speaking, kind of coming from DoD and speaking to DoD, there's questions like, well, why wouldn't they just follow what we follow? And that, could be a big, if everybody thinks it's crazy now, just wait if those kind of mentalities take place.
For sure. And Dirce, we had spoken, you mentioned, your company was saying, hey, we should be doing more in this space. What's your relationship?
Not so much my company. It was not so much my company. It was the previous leader for a previous organization that I worked for, that I kept in contact with. So to Ray's point, they just don't know where to start, and the need is there to do the work, but they just don't know how to go about it, right? So I seen a lot of that, or at least got that experience from them, and that got me really interested in trying to learn more about CMMC and trying to, just be more educated about it, and maybe even get certified from someone that has no federal employment experience.
Which is a great perspective, because I mean, within our own audience, I'm sure there's across the board, and that's from those who have deep federal experience and those who have none. So it's great that we can kind of cover all
that. We're jaded, right, John?
Absolutely. Yeah, you just take things for granted, because it's, why wouldn't you be following some kind of compliance framework? Because at small businesses, if you're a small business, you're trying to survive. You're trying to, if you're manufacturing, you're trying to perfect your niche. Whereas your, system security plan, what is that? What is, so it can be difficult, but for the larger companies, they should have been doing this. I feel for the smaller companies, but it's best practices. And I know it's a lot more. It's 110 controls, and then you have, sub controls, that we can call them that. I call them controls. I think the practices. I'm coming from where I'm at, risk management framework, where it's based on. But it is tough. But I like what Ray said. A lot of don't know where to start, and that's the thing. Like, just take a breath and just start looking into it, because there's so many resources. There really are, if you start to look.
So bringing that back around to Ray, because I know you have and you're going to be talking about small businesses. What do you see in some of the differences between, say, a smaller, mid, or large, in terms of maybe the different approaches?
Yes, I work closely more with the small businesses, and I think a lot of them, it's more so a management. It's like management think it's an IT think it's someone else, and then what about those that don't even have an IT? So everyone's kind of pointing the finger and not really sure where the responsibility lies. But I think the biggest misconception is that a lot of these controls are already implemented, or at least should be, because it's basic safeguarding. So I think it's a scare tactic in a way to use these words that sounds daunting. But once you get the assistance and you actually review what it is that they're asking for, it's not as complex. And it's I wouldn't say easy to implement, but there has to be a strategy. There's a framework. And once you have that understanding and get straight to it, instead of this grand performance that some of these organizations are using, instead of just getting straight to the point and getting them in compliance.
We call it, like, I think for us, Ray, we come from it, and like, this is kind of common sense security, right? And again, like you said, a lot of them are already kind of implemented. It's just articulating it, right? Structuring it so that it looks the way it's supposed to look. And honestly, like, that's what we tell a lot of people. A lot of this is not security, but compliance. And to us, the big difference is security is actually taking care of it, whereas compliance is proving you could take care of it over and over and repeatable, right? And it's a kind of a cycle. Yeah, I totally agree with you that a lot of these things are already taking place. It's just that they don't know it, and then they get with the wrong people. We've seen a lot of companies that partner with the wrong people, and for the most part, they just want to fill the checkbox. But what they should be doing is partnering people that can help them understand what they want, their vision, right? Help them create a vision, and help them understand why they need to be doing these things. And that's just not taking place. And it's kind of hard right now because it's late in the game. I think a lot of what's happening is that there is a lot of calling the bluff that's taking place. Like all of this stuff was supposed to have already taken place like a long time ago, and the DoD or the government just kind of keeps pushing it back, right? Keeps pushing it back. This is the first time that everybody's just kind of like, man, this actually might take place.
Yeah, they actually went through with it.
So I think a lot of they might follow through, right? So we'll see. But I think there's a lot of people that are like, no, they're gonna push it back again, unfortunately.
I think that mind frame is costing a lot of organizations. I think you should lead with we're in an era where you need basic safeguarding at the minimum. So to try to avoid it or push it back is more costing you more than the actual pre-assessment, assessment, or whatever you're looking to maintain or receive. So I think just getting out of that mind frame of trying to find a loophole to get around it, set yourself apart by getting the assessment and getting yourself up to standard would be more ideal than trying to find a way out.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think this will be more cost effective in the long run to do what you're supposed to do, because these are best practices. And I like what Frank said, security is not compliance. I've gotten that argument before, and it's truly not. Compliance is, checking a box. I hate to say it, but it is. But if you do the security right, your compliance should follow, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah. And I love what you said last time we were together, John, where you talked about security as a business decision, right?
Yep.
And I think it kind of goes to what you were saying, right, Ray, where it's like, hey, this is you needing to step up and make that determination for your business that these are the things that are required. Honestly, for me, it's like whether you're doing business with DoD or not, like these are things that everybody should be doing, whatever kind of company that you have.
And then I wanted to throw a question out to the panel, right? I mean, in that vein, as far as teams or people not knowing what to do, CISA just came from my side, literally just came out of nowhere saying we're an official, certification body. For those that are interested in CMC, I want to get everyone's thought on that. I think they're called CAICO, right? So is that adding to the, is that going to add to the angst, or is that going to help with the situation that we're in? I want to get everyone's perspective on that.
Yeah, I think honestly, initially it adds a little to the confusion, because I will say they took over from Cyber AB, just the CAICO, and that's the certification. I'm sorry, I have the acronym spelled out in my head, but these acronyms are rough, especially for people not coming from a federal background. But it's CAICO, and they had the certifications. So what they're doing now, I think they're charging extra soon, because I actually just took my CCA test the 30th of March. I was one of the last ones to take it before it went to ISACA. So things are going to change, but the test questions aren't changing. But Dirce, to your point, it's kind of a handoff for now, but things will change soon enough. Yeah, but ISACA is now taking over the duties of the certifications for CMMC.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know for me, it kind of goes towards more of the, like, do you want to have a secure organization or do you want a compliant organization, right? I would like to think that, like, these companies that want to do it right, they see compliance as a stepping stone to what they define as secure. So I think it's going to add a lot of confusion initially, because everything's going to just kind of be flooded, and then hopefully it'll settle down. But that's going to be the time to tell type of thing.
And a question we had in our... go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, just a question of, and the importance of this. Are companies going to exit the marketplace? Are companies going to take a pause? Or are companies going to sort of meet the compliance in time?
I think I
know for me, go ahead, Ray, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think it's going to be a sprinkle of all of what you mentioned. Either there's going to be some that are prepared, there's going to be some that are not, some are going to give up. So there's going to be some dropping off, not meeting what their contract is stating. So I just think where are you on the spectrum? Where do you stand? Where does your business stand right now will determine where you reside come November.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of companies asking themselves right now, like, is this worth it? And can we afford to not do business with the DoD? Right. I think there's a lot of that happening, and to each his own. Right. I personally think the companies that are asking, like, if it's okay if they don't do business with DoD, they got to be careful, because the writing's on the wall that this is
Yep.
starting with DoD, but a lot of states are already talking about like having this kind of mindset. So I think eventually this is going to be the way it's going to be. How strict it is and things like that. I think that's going to be a moving target. But I think there's a lot of companies that are kind of like pushing the problem down the road, right? And then it catch up to them. I think, like Ray said, right? Like that's going to have some adverse effects for a lot of these organizations.
And Frank, I think you're absolutely right. I see this as the early part of, if you want to do any kind of government, any kind of business with the U.S. federal government, because that's a natural progression, because it's all vendor risk. I really think, well, one of the things is vendor risk with this. And I see this rolling out, and you see it with organizations with contracts with cybersecurity insurance. They're starting to require you. We want to see your books. We want to see what you're doing. So, Brad, couldn't agree more. And I think all businesses should at least be following best practices. I don't care if you're a sole proprietary, but if you're doing business with any federal agencies or large agencies, you should be following these practices. Start now, so you're not caught behind the eight ball.
Now, what about the costs associated? Because obviously, small businesses are on one end of the spectrum, mid-size, and then of course the larger contractors. It is obviously clearly an investment. What is the investment of time and the investment of money kind of range, depending on where people sort of fall on that sort of spectrum?
I think that's a question for you, Ray.
Yeah, I'm going to touch on that, but I think that there's a lot of fear placed around pricing, and it's almost it's no longer like a standard pricing. It's almost based off of where you go. So I think where you stand, how much time, how soon, how much needs to be implemented will be determining the cost. It's one of those things where are you going? Who are you looking to receive this assistance from? So I think it's hard to put a final number on it. It's just based off of ultimately who you decide to work with alongside to help you get to your next step. So it is one of those frustrating things. You want to have a solid number, but it's hard to determine the cost of something when in reality you don't really even know your environment. So we don't even know what we're getting into.
Which maybe leads me to a naive question, but let me just ask this, since you are all the experts here. Do you hire a consultant to get you there and then have the assessor come in and say, and then kind of go through making sure you're compliant or alerting you to something you're not yet compliant on before you're certified? Or is it one and the same? The person who's consulting you is also assessing you. I mean, where does does that make sense?
From my perspective, being ignorant, not working in this field, I would hope you get someone that can do it all, right? I mean, that sounds like additional consultancy plus an assessor to come in after the fact. That doesn't make sense to me, but I definitely would relate to the folks here that are actually in this space to speak to that.
Yeah, and I know Ray can add to this, but you can't have both. It's a conflict of interest. You can't have, because you need someone from a C3 PAO to do a level 2 assessment. And they're the assessors. The consultants can help, but you can't consult. You can't consult with company A, and then if you're a CCA and it turn around 6 months later and it be an assessor part of that assessment. It's a big conflict of interest. And Dirce, you're absolutely right that this federal government. So, we really don't make much sense there. As much as efficiency, we have to be effective. I heard somebody say that one time, and I kind of like that, because we know that the government's not, efficient, but it's supposed to be effective. And they do split it out. Yeah, it's a conflict of interest.
I think it's more of a trust but verify type of thing, right? So I'm pretty sure there are companies out there that do both, and I get more.
Oh, they do both, but they
they're
can't be
doing
involved at the same one. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It just
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure there are some that
Not this
do.
person.
They shouldn't be, but they are, right? You
I
know
think
what
they're
I mean?
tracking that pretty hard.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ray. Sorry.
Yeah, you guys spelled it out. Yeah, it's definitely conflict of interest. You can have one company, but you can't have the same person. And at the end of the day, it is just an overall conflict of interest. I also think that depending on the level, so if you're working with CUI, it's different versus if you want to go straight the assessor route, or if you want to get a consultant to help prepare you for the assessment, because you don't want to walk in and completely bomb the assessment and you haven't even done any work prior. So I think depending on where you stand or what your contract requires determines if you should get a consultant first to help walk you through it, to prepare you for your assessment, and then get the assessment. So it would be two different costs.
I think the one thing we would all kind of like agree on is those people who tell you they can do it for you like in a week. Like, be careful, because
Yeah.
this is something that should take some time to accomplish if done right. Right. I'm not saying that you can't do it in a week and do it right, but that should be kind of a red flag. To get this done in a week, you have to
Yeah.
have a lot of your ducks in a row, and you have to be ready for it. So I call those fixers, and they exist. And I'm not saying that that your company may not need that, but don't look for long-term sustainability using that kind of methodology.
Yeah, Frank, you bring up a good point. These assessments are very expensive. I've heard, and anybody correct me if I'm wrong, I heard they're like around $20,000, some of them.
Yeah.
And I think on average they're very expensive. I feel that depending on your maturity, you should definitely have a consultant come in, because you want to set up the assessment and make sure you're ready. Like in the first stage of the assessment, if they decide you're not ready, they're going to stop the assessment. They're not going through with the assessment, because if you're not ready, if you don't have all the evidence, if you're not prepared, they're not going to continue. They can't continue, because if they turn and go, okay, let us see your system security plan, your blueprint for your security process. Let's call it that for, in lay terms. They're going to stop right there, because if you don't even know what that is, they're not going to continue. And that's even expensive. You pay for them starting the assessment. So I recommend, if you don't feel you can pass the assessment, I wouldn't even, you're not ready for the assessment.
Yeah.
And you're right about the fixtures, Frank. Yeah, there's a lot of people out there to sell you anything, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, you definitely answered my question, which was how supportive were the assessors in the process, and the answer is they're not. They're there to just kind of come in and do the job, and they're not waiting for you to be like, oh, we noticed you're not compliant on this, go fix that, and I'll come back and continue the assessment. It sounds like they're pretty much gonna, either pass you or not pass you, and want to move through that. And so it does sound like engaging a third-party kind of consultant, sort of soft auditor, who can come in and say, hey, I see some gaps, you might want to fill these before you go get, you bring on an official assessor. Is that kind of how it should be approached potentially by companies? Because I think we've talked about in the beginning, companies don't know where to start. So it seemed like maybe getting a third-party advisor, not the person who says I'm going to do it in a week, but somebody who can really be a soft audit, meaning if I see gaps, I will give you the support to go fix them.
Yeah, I think of it like if you're a restaurant and you're going to have an inspection come in, they're not coming in and asking questions. Oh, why is this out of place? Why don't you have a hairnet? Why is this not? They come in, they're observing. It's black and white. Do you? Yes or no? And if you don't, then you fail. So prior, if I'm using the restaurant example, prior to getting that inspection, you're doing all the things that you should be doing and having in place to prepare for this walkthrough. And that's what it feels like. It's a simple, you can't read their face. They're not looking to assist you. That was what you should have done prior to them coming. So like John and Frank said, you don't want to waste your time. You don't want to waste your money. So there's ways around it. And there's a lot of resources as well. If you are on a tight budget, there's so many resources out there that you can utilize prior to even getting a consultant. So if money is very tight. You have to be, innovative and figure out ways around how to support your company and not let that be an excuse as to why you didn't, get your company in where they should to be able to maintain your contracts. I think that would be a lazy, unfortunate mistake that you can make.
And then
I
I
can
have
tell
a
you,
oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead, Dirce.
I have a follow up. So to deal with that sort of situation, what are y'all's thoughts to have like in corporate America, lots of organizations that do vendor risk, vendor third party security management, they're doing trust centers. So AI is kind of stepping up their game to say, okay, these are all our controls, and literally the database of the controls where that resides kind of answers the questions for them internally with the AI and helps them answer questionnaires or anything like that. Do you think that will be some sort of an out for organizations that have the whole, consultant versus assessor situation, or not really? Thoughts?
Even AI needs governance. So if you're using AI, that's still going to be a part of the process as
Yeah,
well.
makes sense. Yeah, totally get it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then I could tell you that, but in speaking to a lot of assessors, whether in DoD or outside of DoD, they say within an hour of any audit, they'll be able to determine how this audit is going to go. And even if you do use AI, like I know for us, we're using AI to kind of like transform the questions so that they're a little bit more down to earth, so that normal people can understand what they're saying. They still need to be answered. A lot of people they think they can just leverage AI to build their program and just kind of like, kind of wash their hands from it. And that's not true. Like there's still a lot of human intervention that needs to take place, because a lot of the questions being asked don't just pertain to, the 5 minutes of the audit. It's the overall security of the program, the program levels. And that can be answered by AI, but I think it's really, really noticeable when the AI is the one doing, when you have AI answering for you in that capacity.
Well, something else we touched on in our opening, John was there with me, as we talked about tone at the top and leadership, because we were talking about how there was sort of a fail of the self-assessment in certain areas that everybody's like, we're fine. And people ultimately, there's that question of ownership. We'll definitely talk about that in one of our upcoming sessions. Frank, you're going to take about that in terms of does this belong to IT? Does this belong to compliance, the legal department, the IT department? Kind of who owns this? But in reality, I think part of who owns it is the leadership, because if people can speak up and say we're not there, and not risk losing their job, versus other people otherwise feeling pressure to be like good is good enough, but they're really not there. So can we talk about leadership and the role of leadership in a company?
Leadership is key. Yeah, leadership is key. It all starts from the top, and you want to encourage people spotting certain things out. You want to encourage the conversations, because security has to enhance the business. That's really what you're there for, and that's what you need to do. But you need to be aware of, your processes, and you need to know and have those processes, follow the business. But it really all starts with the management, because they need to follow the same rules too, and the policies. We see it all the time. Just give me admin account, give me admin access, because I don't feel like calling the help desk, things like that, and that really gets you with spam and things like that. So you really have to be careful on that level. But I mean, what's everybody's thoughts? It starts at the top, because the top controls the finances, and the finances will dictate how strong of a budget security has. And security, along with resources, it's not just tools, it's people, but it's also letting people take the time and put the right resources behind the proper security.
I know for me, I have never been part of an organization that had a really good security program where leadership was not heavily involved. Like
Yeah.
in the DoD, I can tell you, when they do their cyber assessments, one of the questions that they ask is leadership involved? And they don't just ask the question and yes or no. They want to see that they're getting briefed on a regular basis, that that they're part of they're part of the program. And almost every base or any assessment that I've been a part of where they do really well, the leader, like we call them wing commanders, but like the guy in charge of the base is heavily involved. And he might not be as educated as we are about the ones and zeros of it all, but they get it. And for the most part, a lot of these guys are like, they fly planes and they don't know anything about cyber, and they don't care, but they're involved. So to me, like, leadership needs to set the tone, like John said, right at the top. They set the tone, and that's something we'll go over during my session. And it's all about kind of setting the tone and setting the culture. If you have the right culture and leadership sets that culture, it's so much easier as you go down. I've been part of organizations where we were like, okay, we're going to start to harden these iPads, and the CEO is like, okay, but I still going to let my daughter install and play games on this system, right? And we're like, no, dude, that's not how this works. And it was a whole conversation. So you can sense that didn't go very well. That security program kind of suffered from that. So yeah, leadership is there. It's everything to me.
Yeah, I would agree with both of you guys. And leadership cannot operate under assumption. You can't assume that it's a IT or someone else's role. And although, I look at it as CMMC is more an alignment, not delegation, not saying that roles can't be delegated, but everyone has to be on the same accord. Everyone has to be in alignment as to who's doing what. And at the end of it all, leadership has to sign off. So everyone has to be on the same page. You can have different teams, but ultimately it's all about alignment.
And that's back to John's point, where you're saying it's about budget and business decisions. That seems like if I were on a team, there's certain things that I'm being invited to speak up about, and certain things that I know that if I have something to say, there might be resistance. So I think that understanding that leadership position is so important, because you understand what you're being invited to say and what you're not, and you don't want to necessarily create tension in your own position. So yeah, I do think that leadership. So what steps is in Ray, sort of speaking to that middle that you're advocating for, because we sort of said there's and everybody kind of echoed it. There's that sense of the extremes. So what does the middle kind of look like?
As in what? The middle of? Can you elaborate a little bit more?
Just people's thinking right now about CMMC, where they're the extreme. There's the I think it's going to be easy, or I think it's going to be way too hard, and it's neither simple, but it's also not impossible. It's like finding the pathway.
Yeah. So okay. So the ones that are in the middle are the ones that are attempting to do it, but they're having a translation issue. They're trying their best. They have these policies that they're trying to create, but they just can't seem to translate what CMMC requirements are asking of them, and then putting it into terms that they can, prove what they're doing, show what they're doing. So I think it's a big translation. They're not fully understanding what it is that they need to do. So I try to break it down very simple, that one translates the controls into plain examples, and then show me what I need. So I think a lot of these organizations need visuals or examples. And I think some organizations aren't willing to give them these examples because it takes away where they stand as far as the assistance that they're providing. But I'd rather you understand than to drag this out even longer by giving you an example or painting the picture for you to better understand. So I think it's a translation issue. They're not fully understanding how to process the whole requirements within itself.
That's super helpful. I appreciate that. Frank, what are you seeing that you think can be done better?
think one of the problems that we have as cyber operators is that we think differently. We think like code. We can all look at Python and we'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense to us. And the rest of the world looks at it and it's like, what the hell is wrong with you? And that's how we think. One of the biggest like challenges I had in my career was telling a story. Was stepping out of my cyber self and being able to start to speak to the masses, right? And I think I think it's like Ray said, when you're translating, you got to translate to your audience,
In layman's
and
terms.
yes, and you gotta speak to them so that they want to hear. And I think that goes a lot towards the translation. I think that goes towards a lot to Ray's statement that a lot of these people are doing a lot of really good things already. They just don't know it. And that goes towards telling a story. And I think when you start to look at like who you're partnering with and who your consultant is for businesses from a leadership perspective, find somebody that's going to help you tell your story your way. And I think once you do that, everything starts to become imaginable, so to say. And once you have that, once you have their imagination, and once they can kind of see, like, holy smokes, this is my roadmap, most organizations will go. Like everybody wants to be secure. They just don't know what that means. So once you can help them visualize that, they'll go.
Yeah. Frank, I like the way you say that. And I've learned that coming from the government. It's context. Context is so huge because when you're talking to somebody, put it in context. Okay, why would they care about vulnerability management? Okay, because if we don't patch it, that causes a breach. Our systems go down. We can no longer provide our business services. So the door is shut. We can't support our customers. We could go out of business if we don't follow these best security practices. If you put it in context. And it's also, hopefully I haven't said this in a previous one, but you don't use a $10 lock to secure a $5 bike. You got to put it in perspective there too. And I think context, just what Frank, we're IT people. We're techies. So we get all of this. It's all second nature to us. Why should the executives care? Why does the organization care? If you put it in terms and cost, it also goes back to the money as well. The context is huge. And in the last year and a half, that's really come in.
Yeah.
I would say
I like how you said that.
Yeah, I would add to that the risk management, right? The risk, burn down risk. Everyone cares about risk, and that's what the executive leadership team always looks at, right? Risk first and foremost.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to double back off of what John said, I think that's where my strength comes from is I learned the way that I speak. So when I was looking at these requirements and learning these frameworks, I didn't understand anything. So I remember just even when I pivot into tech, I remember starting as a software engineer, I didn't even know what a terminal was. So I had to learn all these things. So now when I'm speaking with my clients and they don't understand, I'm like, perfect. I know exactly where to meet you because I didn't either. So it's definitely context and translation for sure. If you have no idea and it's not your background and you're just, the founder or the CEO and your job is to visualize your mission, not to figure out complex, technology standards and all these things. So definitely I agree with John and Frank.
Yeah, that was well put. Because it's an advantage because you're not indoctrinated. You get to turn to your customers and go, this is why we care. Okay, where are you at? How can we, and we'll talk about POAMs and things like that, but nobody expects you to be secure overnight. It's continuous improvement, continuous monitor. That's really what it comes down to, but you build the maturity of the program. But yeah, being able to speak to your customers, why do I care? Why do I care about what you're asking me? Why do I care about a secure development lifecycle? Why do I care about, AES 256 encryption? Things like that. Well, because nobody's going to eavesdrop on you. Things like that.
We kind of tell, like when we partner with people, we kind of tell them this, like, we don't want you to be confident in your cybersecurity program. We want you to be cocky because we're cocky about what we can do. So why can't you feel cocky about what you're doing? And if we feel that if that's a possibility for them, who the hell doesn't want to feel that? You know, they should feel as comfortable and as confident in what they do on a day-to-day business in their cyber as well. And we truly believe that's capable. You know, I know for us, like my company, we look towards the Rays who can tell a story. We know for us, we're like, look, man, our goal is to put Ray on a pedestal and let her go and empower her to do greatness. And then go to John and say, okay, now continue it. You know, that's kind of our mentality. And I would just tell everybody when they're looking out, look for partners. Don't look for, don't look for a transactional, kind of thing. Look for a transformational type of partner. And if you can do that, oh man, you're so much better off than almost any other company or organization out there.
Well put.
All well said. Well, it is time for us to move on to, speaking of putting Ray on a pedestal, we're so excited for your session coming up next, CMMC and the small business reality, compliance without overwhelm. So excited for our next session. So we will see you all there, and really excited to hear more on this. So Ray, we'll see you in that session, and then we'll continue on our day with Frank and John and Dirce, and continue on our event. So everybody join us there, and we'll see you all in the next session. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks so.